Hello and welcome back to Into the Shadows. If you're new here, welcome. If you've listened in before, welcome back. This is a space for those walking the edge between the seen and the unseen. For those who are remembering what's been buried beneath the surface of old conditioning, unspoken truths, and ancestral weight. I'm Melissa, a dreamer, a sacred witness, and a guide for those who are unraveling the layers that have kept them from their truth. Here we explore shadow work, dream work, ancestral healing, the collective unconscious, and a deep feminine remembering of not only ourselves, but to the earth. So whether you're walking through transformation, awakening to your truth, or reconnecting to your own inner wisdom, this is a space for you to come home to who you truly are. This episode came from a few threads that I've been thinking about, a powerful dream, and a deeper season of healing around the different masks that I have worn and that people wear. And the thing is, we all wear them at some point in our lives. Some of us wear them to survive, some to be loved, some to keep the peace. I know that was a big one for me. But the bigger question is, what's underneath these masks that we wear? And what happens when we finally decide to take them off? In my last episode, I spoke briefly about the false mask that I wore around my sexuality. And that one in particular, that one runs really deep for me. It was what got me to start shadow work and diving into a deeper healing path to help heal some of these sexuality wounds that I had. And, for me, how it all began was with childhood sexual abuse. That trauma really disconnected me from my body at a really young age. Early on, I learned it wasn't safe to feel. That being in my body meant that it was dangerous. So I disassociated. I felt numb. And I built a life around not feeling, especially in intimate situations. Then came my marriage, a relationship where I was constantly told something's wrong with you, where my lack of desire or responsiveness was not met with curiosity or care, but rather with blame. And that message really triggered the shame that was already living inside of my body. It reinforced the belief that I was broken. Or rather, I felt like I was. So I adapted. I did what so many of us women do. I wore a mask. I pretended to be the orgasmic woman. I performed. I acted like I was into it, and at times I was. But on the inside, I was really shut down, and my body felt really numb. And I became what I thought I had to be in order to be loved, wanted, or not abandoned. Until later in my marriage when I just stopped caring. caring about my yes, my no, or anything that was really connected to my true authentic ask. After my divorce, that performance got echoed and reinforced by the larger culture, by the media, by porn. And this is a topic that I would love to unpack in future episodes because I think it deserves its own maybe dozen episodes. But I want to name it here. Porn teaches both men and women to disconnect. And it turns sex and pleasure into a kind of performance. Honestly, it kind of rewards the numbness. And here's the thing. This also deserves a dozen podcast episodes, but I grew up Mormon. And so that's not exactly like a church or organization that celebrates sexuality. So this mask was born from trauma and reinforced by abuse and sustained by a culture of patriarchy and performance that really rewards pretending over presence. Underneath the mask that I wore was a deep shame. The kind that whispers, "You're not enough. You're broken. You have to keep this hidden." And that's what I carried. And I really hated carrying it. I felt I was being inauthentic. I didn't like that I was pretending. So, like many women, I shaped myself into what I thought was acceptable, lovable, or desirable. And that was a woman who didn't ask for what it is that she wanted, what she needed, what she liked. So that's what the mask does. It keeps us performing, even that when what we long for is just to be real. So these masks, the ones we wear in society, work, or relationships, they show up in all kinds of ways. Emotionally, maybe they show up because we don't want to face the truth, that we feel broken, flawed, or not enough. Or maybe we're just pretending to be something or someone we're not. Constantly overextending ourselves, performing, people-pleasing. Spiritually, these masks keep us from fully living, from fully touching the essence of who we are. And that is a tragedy. Because when we're always pretending, we don't have to show up to life. And we miss out on the deeper, more authentic connections that are meant for us. And instead, we might entertain relationships that aren't rooted in our personal truth. So instead, we conform, we please, we entertain. A side note here, in Jungian psychology, this mask has a name, and Carl Jung called it the persona. And this persona is the part of ourselves that we create and present to the world in order to feel accepted. But the thing is, this persona isn't who we really are. You can think of it as a kind of costume that the ego wears so that we can move around and function in society and be accepted. But the problem is when we confuse the persona with our soul, we stay stuck in roles that we didn't really choose. Maybe it's the role of the helper, or maybe you're the good girl. That's me, by the way. The strong one. You know, we lose contact with our deeper selves that live underneath those costumes, those masks. And that's where the disconnection in our being begins. And the thing is, everyone's mask is a little different because we all learn to wear them from different and unique childhood experiences. So, you know, were you the person who had a narcissistic parent or two? Or did you have an authoritarian father? Or maybe a codependent mother? Or how was your relationship with your siblings? Anything that made you feel like you were exiled or like you had to be different in order to be accepted? That's the mask. And most of us, by default, we still wear them. And from personal experience, it's so exhausting. Think of the times that you felt you had to pretend in a social setting, or times when you felt hyper-focused that you had to say the right thing. It's so tiring, and it's not who we really are. What I've come to see is that all masks are, in some essence, bypassing. Not because we're consciously trying to be fake, but because we learned early on that certain parts of us weren't safe to show others. So we shifted, we shapeshifted, we protected, we adapted. But eventually the bypass became the prison. The prison that we live in to protect ourselves, to stay safe from rejection or disapproval. Because deep down in our nervous system, there is a need to stay in the group, to be received, to be accepted, and to not be exiled. But the cost is our authenticity, our truth. And we miss out on discovering the truth of who we are, despite our flaws. And when we wear the mask for too long, that's when we stop evolving. And we start living for other people, shaping ourselves around what other people think we should be or what's expected of us. It keeps us stuck, it keeps us small, and it keeps us performing. And the soul doesn't thrive in performance. It thrives in truth. So at this point, I'd love to share with you a dream that I had that plays into the theme of this episode. And, but first, before I share it, I want to talk about what's a shapeshifter. It's an archetype that lives in many of us, especially those of us who've had to survive through adaptation. The shapeshifter can be a gift. It can read the room. It can move between energies. It can learn to be what others need. It's also intuitive even magical at times. But in its shadow, the shapeshifter loses track of what's real. It becomes a bypass for it to put on a mask, and it can over-adapt. Sometimes the shapeshifter shows up during trauma, especially when we've had to perform to be loved, or if we've had to silence ourselves to stay safe. And in my dream, the shapeshifter showed up as Mystique. But she wasn't just symbolic. She was me. She was the part of me that had forgotten her true face beneath all the roles that she had played. So this dream, it was about a woman who was a shapeshifter. And funny enough, she looked like Mystique from X-Men. I haven't seen that movie in I don't even know when it came out, 10 years, 15, maybe longer. And I don't watch movies, so just the symbol of that showing up was really random and also really powerful. But in the dream space, I'd been working deeply on uncovering my shadow through my dreams. And these deep layers of sexual abuse were arising. And also layers around overgiving, rescuing others, instead of doing my own inner work. So this is kind of a long dream. And I'm just going to share the part that is resonant to this episode, because this dream honestly deserves its own episode. But in this dream, I was working around these different freeze patterns, these ancestral freeze patterns around sexual abuse and using my voice. And then here I am in the dream, and I'm pinning this woman down. And as I pinned her down, I started to press my hand into her face. And as I did, it started to peel away a mask that she was wearing. And this was a mask that had kept her safe. This mask that she'd been wearing was helping to play a role in this ancestral freeze. But by me pressing on it and acknowledging it, it started to show itself. And what I uncovered was this shapeshifter, this Mystique. And this was a false self that was showing itself because it was ready to be integrated. But under the mask was also my true self. And this is the power of dreams. And like Carl Jung says, when you meet the psyche, it meets you halfway. So before this, I had been doing some deep dream work around sexual trauma. And this mask, the shapeshifter, she showed up as the good girl, the helper, the overgiver. And I was unconsciously wearing this mask and leaking my energy trying to help others so that I could feel safe. It mirrored a deep disempowerment from the trauma that I had endured as a child. So the version of me that hid behind the mask, she was deeply wounded. And for a long time, she believed that she was too much. She believed that if she spoke up, she'd be rejected. So, what have I learned from taking this mask off? That it's more important for me to be in my truth than to perform around people who never really hear me. Even if I end up being alone, even if I'm the only one who hears my voice, behind the mask is freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to be myself, and freedom to live in my own authenticity. And, the past relationships that were built on performance, they get to fall away. And that's okay. But the ones that are meant for me, I know that those will stay. That rhymed. That's cool. Since showing up more honestly, I've really had to say goodbye to the things that drain me, to the performance, to the pretending. And I've started to choose what I actually want. That's what taking off the mask has given me. A life that feels rooted, grounded, and feels like it's authentically mine. And one that gets to reflect the truth of who I am. So this dream didn't just show me a mask. It showed me a kind of cosmic imprint of what it costs to silence my voice. A voice that generations of women before me weren't allowed to use. So thank you for making it this far with me. If you're still here, I'd love to invite you into a practice before we end. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, then I invite you to do that. And I invite you to just settle your breath in your body and allow yourself to feel that inhalation and that exhalation. Really grounding and centering into your heart. I want you to feel for your truth. And if you can't feel it, I want you to just imagine. And now I want you to bring to mind a relationship where you're not fully showing up in your authenticity. And there's no shame, there's no judgment. This is just curiosity. And asking yourself, where have you compromised your truth to feel safe? What are the hidden fears that say it's not safe to be real here? Those are your clues. And that's a shadow behind a mask. Be gentle with yourselves. And thank you for being here, for listening. And until next time, I really hope that you can honor your shadows and that you can trust your voice. I'll see you next time.